Welcome back and thanks for staying with ANN7 Prime. My name is Cindy Mabi. Good evening to you. A furore grows after First National Bank fires 4 employees for sharing their political views with each other. Black First Land First movement says that the case reveals FNB's hypocrisy as its own CEO has reportedly shared or aired anti-Zuma views. ANN7 reporter Valerie Robinson has the story.
Black First Land First says FNB's sacking of 4 staff members have revealed glaring hypocrisy at the bank. This is after First National Bank fired 4 employees for discussing their political views. Yet FNB CEO Jacques Silas was reportedly part of the anti-Zuma march earlier in 2017. Reports also place him among those denouncing government on state capture and the axing of Pravin Gordhan.
It is, in our view, clear case of racism, of bullying, of intimidation, and an attempt to also make sure that no one raises the issue of transformation within the banking system. The first thing we're going to do is to send a letter to the chief executive of FNB, Jacques Silas, demanding a meeting. We are going to brief an attorney and then ask this attorney to brief an advocate so that this matter is also reviewed from the point of view of law.
The sacked staff members have hit out at their former employer. They say their dismissal is due to their ANC political affiliation.
One of the main reasons we were victimized and lately shift out of the system was because we were perceived as being ANC members. But the very same African National Congress, which we so much love and we so much represent, has not came to the fore to say, hey, you understand that you have paid the price because of our brand. Can you please try to assist?
FNB still remains untransformed even today, in 2017. I mean, obviously, as my colleagues have said here, once you say anything that is anti-white, then you actually get labeled and then you should be shifted out of the system. That's what happened to us.
FNB has come out saying it considers the matter closed as it followed due processes. But BLF has warned of further action and is demanding that FNB reinstate the employees.
Black First Land First, having laid out their plans to assist these fired employees, have vowed to go to FNB headquarters on Wednesday to meet with the CEO and management, and they have vowed to do so whether or not they are willing to meet with them. Valerie Robinson, ANN7, Johannesburg.
And joining us on the line, Ivan Israel Stum as the CEO with the Labour Law Management Consulting firm, Adil Nchabeleng, Transform RSA President, Oliver Dixon, he's a social political analyst, and Zanele Luana is Deputy National Convener of Black First and Land First. And I can see Mr. Israel Stum will be joining us on set in a short bit. Good evening to you, and thanks so much for joining us. And let's just look at the charges of why these 4 FNB employees have been sacked.
The 4 FNB employees have been charged by the First National Bank, particularly because of the comments that they have made that don't seem to be attacking the sitting president of the country. They are being charged of racist sloganeerism because of their views they have expressed on how the Democratic Alliance still remains a white racist party today, and how people like Musi Maimane continue to be mouthpieces of white settler monopoly capital today. But we know, as the Black First Land First movement, that this is totally out of order because the CEO of the First National Bank has been quite vocal, also participated in the protests and marches that were calling for President Zuma to step down in this country. These workers, particularly, they are being victimized because they can see that there is a deliberate agenda in South Africa to call for regime change in this country. And First National Bank, as a bank that is a criminal organization that is at the forefront of regime change in this country, is victimizing these workers to push them into submission, basically.
All right, can we compare the CEO's actions if he's going to march in the so-called Save SA CEOs forum, participate in that, with what the employees have done as similar transgressions of a company policy, for example?
I think the matter came out as an oversight. I don't think the CEO was directly involved, particularly with regards to the firing of the workers. It could have been an oversight within the bank, which was then discovered by the CEO or the executive management of FNB. So I think at this stage, maybe we should look at it from that point of view. But what is pertinent here, actually adding to what Zanel is saying, is that here we have an organization. At the head of it is CEO, who has been vocal and outright in condemning the current president as well as the current sitting regime in South Africa, which has been the ANC. And yet they take an offense when one of their employees makes a passing remark, which we've already heard from one of the employees saying that it was some kind of a joke, which they made within an email. But as a result, they were implicated in some kind of a purging mechanism that said that these employees must be disciplined as a result, must be taken through a process, and it ended up being fired as employees. Here you're dealing with a huge issue of economic racism, of targeting black people and making sure that black people never have rights that can be expressed. You cannot follow somebody on WhatsApp in order to institute a disciplinary action against them.
Yeah, but if the company provides the smart device for you to have a WhatsApp group relating to a divisional workshop or to create an environment where there's free flow of information, and you then have certain comments that sits uncomfortably with the company, can you be held liable as an employee? Is there a social media policy, for example, that says if you mention the DA being a racist party, for example, that is a dismissible offense?
There is deliberate inconsistency on the part of the First National Bank, because the dismissed employees, they have expressed that they have had conversations where the tone of the conversations were anti the sitting president of the country, and no process was instigated to discipline them. Only when the tune had changed to say that something is wrong with the country and we are within a space where a regime change is being called. We also know that from the media also, there's no freedom of expression in South Africa. If you represent an alternative view, if you are the dissenting voice in society, you are labeled as racist, you are labeled as intolerant, you are labeled as a Gupta, Zuma puppet, as an unthinking person, because you are able to stand your ground and say that we are not going to allow a situation where white people, in particular white settler monopoly capital, tells us who to hate and not to hate, while they continue to own the means of production and the land of this country. As a black people, we are landless because of white people in this country. This is the type of conversation they do not want, because the type of conversation to say the country has been captured and these people continue want to milk the country of its resources, it has a potential to awaken and to shift the thinking of our people to addressing the real problems.
Yeah, where's the hypocrisy, though, Mr. Dixon, if we were to compare what other comments have been made in lieu of what's going on in the country politically, say criticizing Jacob Zuma, nothing was done, but the minute you mention a leader of the opposition, there seems to be a very quick knee-jerk reaction.
I'm going to bring in a couple of nuanced points of clarity here. I think, first of all, and importantly, 3 questions need to be asked. One, were there anything wrong with some of the comments made by these gentlemen? And if so, do those comments, do those actions and behavior deserve sanctioning? The second question then is, that sanctioning that they did receive, was it proportional to the gravity of the transgression? And then thirdly, what does this mean for FNB and corporate South Africa and race relations in South Africa largely? To the first question, were there some transgressions in these sort of things? I think certainly yes. I don't think we should scapegoat and say, but white people do this, because I think, and this is in defense of the personhood of Mmusi Maimane, I think an attack on his relationship the entire time in our political discussions is unfair towards him and his wife. I think there's a genuine bond that we need to respect over there, and we ought not bring his personal relationship into our political critique of Mmusi Maimane.
I disagree, because every time we talk politics, Zuma and his life and family and wives gets brought into the discussion.
Yes, and it shouldn't be the case.
That's not something that we should be defending at this stage.
I agree with you. It shouldn't be the case that we ever bring in Jacob Zuma's personal life into our political critique. Anyone's personal life. Just because other people do it doesn't mean it's justified
in light
if we do it.
Of freedom of speech, of course, we can't discuss, if everybody's got a right of expression. Mr. Ilstrom is the CEO of Labour Law Management Consulting. Good evening to you. I hope your audio is sorted out. But thanks for joining us. Can people be fired for political... Can you be fired for making political comments on a WhatsApp group, which is essentially a chat room amongst colleagues?
The law wouldn't militate against being fired for that. It would depend on the context and how serious it is. What the law would support is somebody being dismissed, not necessarily for making political comments, but for making racial comments. So a court is going to have to sort the matter out, and the court's going to have to decide whether FNB's real motive was to fire people because of racist comments, or whether the real hidden motive might have been for criticizing a politician.
All right, so let's get Mr. Dixon's view.
And I agree that I think that's an important piece of clarity here. So, in as far as we're going to say, look, guys, transformation is a really nice thing. Let's all go for transformation. Don't dehumanize people in that process. And I think there may have been a little bit of that. To fire these people is unparalleled incorrect. You cannot justify firing these people based on it. I think maybe some level of disciplinary action was necessary. Maybe a written warning, maybe a verbal warning, not firing them. So FNB is clearly wrong in that instance. But it also exposes their hypocrisy, because I don't think the intention of FNB was really about race relations in that instance. It was about really getting rid of these gentlemen for perhaps ulterior motives, perhaps even because of the pandering towards whiteness in that instance. And I think that's where we need to start criticizing FNB, because, and this has been the largest critique in social media, is that white people do this over braai on the weekend every time. They may even do it in work emails. They just never get fired for it. And that exposes that hypocrisy. So I entirely agree that whiteness is ubiquitous in this instance, and FNB has completely pandered towards that in this instance.
Okay, so but how do we prove then, and I think going forward, ensuring that you are protected, even if you may not have been inducted in some company policy, that if you were to make reference to the boss's wife based on her race, that is regarded as a racist statement for argument's sake?
How would the boss know unless they're going through your material? FNB has thousands of employees. Are they going through each and every individual employee's emails and checking for this kind of race remarks? Are they looking at what employees are doing in terms of on their, their network system? Are they going through their personal WhatsApps to check and actually go through the findings? Are you being racist towards white people, or are you being supportive in terms of the anti-Zuma slogan or whatever? So these are some of the things that really don't make sense. What is more important is the issue brought something very important into the fore, that we still have a race relation inequality. Here, the young people are citing something, says, we are workers of FNB. We cannot afford to buy our own houses. Very valid issue. We cannot afford to even get credit to buy cars. We cannot even get further education or opportunities of skills development within FNB. And yet the same bank benefits from government grants on how to train employees, skills development levies and other things. The same bank benefits from government spending in terms of giving business towards FNB for opportunities. So there is a diversionary interest here which we must deal with. Transformation is very important in South Africa. It's not something that we can put on the back burners. If these banks are out of line, we must be calling them back to line.
Mr. Ilstrom.
Yeah, I just want to clarify that in many cases, and I don't know if it's the case here, big institutions are able somehow to monitor emails technologically to pick up racist comments in either direction in order to make sure that their airwaves aren't being misused in this way, to protect the people in the bank and the bank itself.
Yeah, so but would you agree, sorry to interrupt you, in the sense that these four argue that they've been targeted and it's because the bank is not transformative? And why, in the year or so that they were under investigation, has the red flag only been raised when there's a mention of DA leader Musi Maimane's wife being white and criticism of the DA?
If it is so that there haven't been any others recently, I would say it's quite suspicious.
Yeah. Okay, so FNB would have to satisfy that these have been maybe...
The only isolated issues, which is not going to be the case. You have thousands of people sending emails on a daily basis. So you would not have one single person not mentioning the word white. So it's really quite suspicious as to why they were picked up for just spelling the word white. In that case, they were joking. I mean, some of the remarks don't even make sense. It's, we have to actually get my money to change his skin tone to whatever. I mean, that's why just passing
remarks. It might just be a
remarks.
Michael Jackson. It might just
Thank you.
himself,
I mean,
yeah.
you know what I mean?
Look, it may be a joke, but I don't think we should pass it off as it's a joke. Let's not take it serious. They were
Well,
still
it cost them their jobs.
They were still
It's clearly not
dehumanizing
funny.
Musa Maimane, and I think Musa Maimane is entirely entitled to his whole personhood and his agency in that instance. So I think those guys were wrong. And all South Africans who make these sort of jokes are wrong. Stop it, right? You're dehumanizing and stripping away people of their agency and identity in that instance. But importantly, I think, and look, FNB probably does have an email filter where they filter everybody's emails and look for trigger words and, you know, catchphrases, and, you know, they then, it alerts human resource to go look at that, and they do. But I think in this instance, FNB needs to tell us, we need to do an actual audit of all emails that filter through, of all keywords
But that's what I said.
And they need to,
that needs to be
I think
interrogated.
but it's
needs to
also
be
an
interrogated.
intolerance, though. It's an intolerance of allowing people the ability to engage, just as colleagues, you know, on your view, be it your prejudice or whatever your background may come from, without necessarily infringing on somebody else's rights. In other words, the third person that you are, quote unquote, gossiping about, you know, how then does that become a policy transgression or you know,
Well,
as
can,
colleagues?
it will be if it's racist. That's where the line is drawn. You can gossip as much as you like, and the employer can't do much to you. But the moment you get racist in any direction, I want to clarify, you are breaching the rules of any employer. But you have to be consistent about it.
All right, Zanele, I think she may just differ with you on this.
Black people are the oppressed people in
cannot be
this
racist.
country. And we cannot have a situation where black people are being censored or silenced on what to say and what not to say, because we are the subjects of oppression in this country. And most of the exploitation that we have to live with every day as the black majority is through our workspaces. FNB is a workspace for black people. So we cannot say that these conversations cannot happen. Musa Maimane happened to feature in this particular conversation, but these workers were talking about imperialism. They were talking about regime change. They were talking about how the president is not wanted in this country. And this was private. You have a CEO of First National Bank who is part of the Save South Africa so-called organization, which calls for regime change in this country, Save South Africa says the country has been captured, the black president elected by black people in this country must step down. No actions have been taken against the CEO. Why? Because it is the narrative that is being advanced by mainstream media today to create false public views on what the real problems are in this country.
Yeah, so the true test, Mr. Israel Stem, the true test of what constitutes being racist is in the power dynamics, that if you, as an employee, number one, may not necessarily have the privilege or even the environment that generally promotes you based on your skin color, that you wouldn't have, as Mr. Dixon was saying, that personal agency to want to speak up. So now you've got a platform where you can chat and you can say, you know, inequality is still rife in this country. White people still dominate. There's white supremacy and privilege. What is racist about that? Make me understand.
Saying what you want isn't inherently racist. It's what you say. It's the words you say. It would be a travesty of justice if the employees of this country weren't able to use their employer's own email system to express their views. The line would have to be drawn at racist remarks, because otherwise you would have white people making racist remarks against black people, and then you're going to have a war within the institution. So
but in this case, it's actually led to 4 people losing their livelihood.
So I think importantly here is that we need to draw semantic distinctions here that are important for the purposes of race conversations in South Africa. One, these gentlemen were not racist. They're incapable of being racist, and we should never label as that. Prejudiced, maybe. And this is where I want to disagree with Zanele. White people allow this to happen, sure, but we shouldn't excuse it when black people do it to each other. If I strip you of your agency, it shouldn't be justified on the basis that white people also happen to do it. It should also be sanctioned. And I think a sanction is necessary. Firing them is disproportionate to the action.
I think just maybe to add on the conversation, I think, look, from an Oliver's point of view, black people cannot be racist. They were subjected to racism. And from an Ivan's point of view, white people have always had the privilege to act out racism as a system. So you cannot be defining by a person who has been given the opportunity to define what constitutes racism to give us the definition of black people being racist. It just doesn't make sense. Let's get to the pertinent facts here. 4 employees were fired for a simple, casual conversation. That's what is important right now. Secondly is they've lost their lives and livelihood, and the bank is implicated here, which is not a good thing because there are partial investors and there are absent investors who are not happy about what has happened in FNB. And not only that, FNB should have been by today at the at the axis of transformation in South Africa, which is not doing it. All right. Right now, FNB should have released a statement that says either what is their position with regards to this particular mishap that has happened. Are they willing to retract and actually bring in the 4 employees for a discussion or a deliberation on the matter? We have already engaged with FNB to say particularly that we were not happy as the outcome of what has happened within the firing of the 4 employees. But only that the main issue is transformation in South Africa is not a priority to any of these institutions. So the issue of racism is a runaway scapegoat. We cannot be using it today to justify the firing of black employees on the basis that they made a biracial, by the way, couple mentioning to say this is a biracial couple which is white and black. So, I mean, this whole thing doesn't make sense. It was just a targeting of employees who could have been vocal on many other issues.
Your view?
Perhaps we should take it upon ourselves and educate First National Bank on what racism is. What racism is that First National Bank is a white bank owned by white people, but the general workers, they are black. What racism is the fact that the economy still remains white. That's why we have white settler monopoly capital in this country. What racism is that South Africa is first and foremost a black country, but the landless people in this country are black people, while 80% of the land is in the hands of white people. What racism is monitoring what constitutes conversation, and these conversations do not even seem to have had an impact on the productivity, rather, on these particular employees. What racism is silencing dissenting views within the working space, abusing your power as white people who own this particular institution. This is what racism is.
All right, let's just go to the context.
Injustice. We can't call that
in the
racism.
interest of our viewers who may not have seen the quote or the WhatsApp group chats, you know, one of the 4 who've now been fired says in a response that I'm shocked that Musi Maimane's wife is white. And the other one responds and says, white voice, white party, white wife. Very soon he'll be a Michael Jackson and bleach his skin. So Mr. Ilstrin, maybe I should just call you Ivan.
You're welcome.
So where in that, and I understand where it could be prejudicial, or is it racist in your view? Does it justify them being fired for that kind of conversation?
I need to say 2 things. That kind of a statement in its own context certainly could be seen as being racially charged. There's no doubt about it. You're criticizing him for being married to a white person, and you're saying it's making him white, and you're saying it in a very critical, degrading manner.
Is it racist or condescending? Or
I think it's both.
Yeah.
But it certainly could be seen as racist. But I see that as secondary. The point is, did the bank merely jump onto that bandwagon and misuse it as an excuse to fire undesirable employees? Or was that really the bank's sincere, genuine reason? And that is what the court is going to have to decide, based on what did the bank do when it found other people making similar types of racial comments.
I mean, they also go on to pay her, Natalie, a compliment, you know, she's beautiful and all of those other things.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that can be
used
as mitigating circumstances, that it was all in the spirit of having a conversation and being honest and open with each other.
We all have conversations over the water cooler in jest, where we say things about people in ways that are politically just incorrect. Right? These guys did make a politically incorrect, and I do want to disagree. It's not a racist statement. Let's stop calling it that. But also, like, Ivan, you can't say it's racist. It can be seen as racist, and you think it's racist, but that's secondary. Like, to think of it as racist and secondary is problematic, because it means racist actions, insofar as you think it's true, should always be secondary to organizational, procedural things. So firstly...
I mean, sorry, Mr. Dixon. Some of the conversations at the water cooler would be things, and it's also in part of the conversations, that all things that are black tends to be labeled evil, and all things virtuous tend to be white. You know, white beauty, or living up to a certain standard, and also denouncing the other.
Can I just
you know what I mean?
something,
So
please?
blackmail, for example, white collar crime, all of
Could I just clarify something, please? Why I'm saying it's secondary is because one can see from the comment that was made what is behind it, and what is behind it is anger. There's no doubt about it, that there are a lot of people working for this company and many others who are truly angry about the position that they've been put into by the situation that we have, economically unequal situation in the country. That is why I said that the racist comment is secondary, because the reason for what it is, we can't deny that's what it is, but the reason for what it is what we should be dealing with. There should have been a response by the bank to say, look, there is this anger, there's this problem, let's lift it out and bring the angry parties up and deal with the matter and try to solve it, rather than just a knee-jerk reaction as a way of almost victimizing people.
It's a page,
So you think it's a slam dunk for the employees?
Look, those guys, and this is my opinion, I hold it as a personal opinion right now. Those guys were fired because they dared speak about transformation. They dared speak about the racial makeup of the organization. That's the real reason they were fired. So this is scapegoating. But importantly then, the real question is, what do we do now? First thing I think that needs to happen, Luthuli House needs to sit Chancellor House down and cancel all their relationships with FNB. Effective, immediate, if it cares about black people in South Africa. Chancellor House cannot continue to do business with FNB. But secondly, and importantly, we now need to start holding FNB accountable to its own transformation organizationally. We need to ask FNB, why is it the case that your shareholdership still looks the way it does? Why is it the case that most of your line managers and private bankers are still predominantly white? And why is it that the promotion trajectory of white employees is faster than that of black employees within FNB? Those are important questions we need to ask, but we shouldn't excuse the fact that these guys dehumanized Musi Maimane from his marriage and dehumanized him from his personhood in the process of advocating for transformation.
How does, very briefly, with 10 seconds, Zanele, how does FNB help itself to use their byline?
We must be clear that the First National Bank has absolutely no case here. Has absolutely no case. This is a particular situation where dissenting voice and alternative views are being deliberately silenced. Why you have a CEO that is calling for regime change in this country, there's no case there. But also, we must know that the First National Bank is a racist criminal organization.
We're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much to our panelists. And we have Ivan Israelstam. He is the CEO of a labor law marketing consultancy. Adil Nchabeleng is Transform RSA president. Oliver Dixon is a socio-political analyst. And Zanele Luana, deputy national convener of Black First and Land First movement. And you at home, thanks indeed for your time. We'll be back after this.